All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Melissa Galbraith, and I'm the fiber artist behind M Creative J. Today, we will be working on a floral applique shirt. So let's go ahead and dive on in. If you want to switch it over to the overhead view, perfect. All right, so the first thing we need to do is pick out our fabrics. In the fabric pack linked on the class description, there was 4 fun floral fabrics to choose from, and I'm going to use this blue and the yellow fabrics here. You can see I kind of alternated between the flowers on the outside and the centers here. And we also want to have our iron and our ironing board ready here. So I'll scoot this over. And the first thing we want to do is just iron out our fabric. So we don't have any funky creases or anything when we go to add on our backing here. So I have my iron set to about like a medium because this is a cotton. Sometimes your iron will tell you what setting is best for your material, but usually like a medium is pretty good here. So we have our fabric ironed out nice and flat. And now we want to add our HeatnBond adhesive to the back. And this will make it so it kind of sticks to our t-shirt. I pulled out a piece here. And you can see one side has kind of like a bubbly rough side, and the other side has this smooth paper side. We want to put the bubbly rough side on the back of our fabric. So I'll just flip this over. And we'll take that bubbly side here, just line it up on the back. And I'm kind of avoiding this selvage edge here. Line that up a little bit. And then we're just going to press down for about 10 seconds so that those glue dots adhere to the back of our fabric. Move over, keep on going here. Just press down and hold some. And you'll know if your iron's not hot enough because this will not stick on the back here. Nice press down to get our sellable adhesive on there. So nice and stuck here. So next we need to figure out what we're going to use for our patterns here. And I did kind of a flower pattern here. So I just traced out a piece on a piece of cardstock and I'll trace that on here. You could use a pencil or a pen and just draw directly onto the back of this adhesive as well too. Either way is fine. Grab a pen here and we'll just trace this out on the back. It's okay if it's not perfect because we are going to cut this out here and we can even up any of those funky edges there. So there is my flower pattern. And I will just cut this out here. Set that piece out to the side. And we'll cut this out. Kind of following our outline here. And this is on the back, so no one will see if our lines are a little funny or if we don't follow them anyway. And we'll want to do this for all of our pattern pieces we are using for our applique design here. And for mine, I did 3 different flowers and then they have flower centers. I have already kind of prepped the other 2 so we can get going with applying those. But I wanted to make sure to show you how to do this process here. So there's our flower, and I'll just set this bit off to the side. And as you can see, I have my other flowers and flower centers there. So we want to next take our t-shirt here and we'll lay that out on our ironing board. So that way we can just iron these flowers on directly to our t-shirt. So center that on our board here and figure out how we want these laid out. There we go. That looks fun. So after we have our pattern laid out, we are just going to peel off that paper backing. And just use the pad of your finger and pull that away there. And set that down. And then we'll iron this down again so that it all sticks to our fabric. So right now it's not sticking, so I can still move it around if I wasn't happy with the layout. But once it's ironed on, it's pretty much stuck. So we want to be happy with how it's laid out before then. And a nice little flower center. I think that's pretty centered and happy with how that's laid out. So just like we did when we ironed on the backing, we're just going to use our iron, press down and hold for about 10 to 15 seconds or so. You can scoot over a little bit and get the rest of our pieces. Next flower here. Press and hold that on down. So those blue dots on the back stick onto our t-shirt. This will kind of keep our fabric from fraying as well too. And we will stitch this down just to make sure it's really nicely stuck and add some fun decorative elements with it. Make sure we don't have any bubbles there. I think we're good with our flowers. So now that we have our flowers and flower centers attached, we are going to do a little bit of stitching with this to add some decorative elements and make sure everything just really stays nicely attached here. So I picked out two fun colors of DMC embroidery thread. This is just the 6-strand cotton thread. I kind of found a peachy color that matched something that went with my yellows here, and then a blue that kind of went with the blues. And as you can see, the blue is kind of stitched around the blue flowers and the flower centers, and then we'll use the peach to go around the outline of those sections, the yellow sections as well too. You could use whatever thread colors you would like to match your fabric. So we are going to start out with the running stitch, which is this dashed line here, and I'll use that with my blue thread. So when we do that, we want to find the barcode end of our thread, find the thread end that's sticking out, and we're going to measure out an arm's length. So I go nose out to fingertips. And that way, you know, you have enough to work with your own arm there. And I'll just use a little pair of scissors here and cut that away. So inside that thread we just cut, there's actually 6 strands of thread. We don't want to use all 6 because it's a little too chunky for our t-shirt and can sometimes damage your fabric. So we are going to work with 3 strands of thread today. And when we pull out our thread, we want to grab them one at a time. So when we pinch the end, we'll grab just one strand and pull straight up. So our thread bunches underneath itself. We'll set that one strand down next to us. flatten out that thread, and then go in for another one. And I like to do it this way just because I find that when I grab more than one strand, it usually becomes a big tangling mess. So those are my 3 strands I'll start with, and I'll set these other 3 strands down over here. So we want to line up our thread ends to make sure they're nice and even here. And I usually get them a little wet, which means I stick them on in my mouth so they stick together nicely. And then I'll just pinch the very end and kind of glide that through the eye of my needle. And this is just a regular embroidery needle. I think it's from the like 1 through 5 pack that DMC offers. And then when I embroider, I like to have a short side of thread and a long side of thread, and I put a knot at the long end. The reason I have a short side that's always loose and open is because if you need to take anything out, undo knots or stitches or anything, you can easily take your needle off the thread. When you tie the 2 thread ends together, it's just much harder to do that. So when we have our needle threaded, we want short side of thread and a long side of thread. And I put a knot at the long end, and to do that, I do what's called the quilter's knot. So needle pointy side up, we take the very end of our long end of thread, cross that in front of our needle, so we make a little plus sign, and pinch those 2 together. So you're holding your needle and the thread end in your dominant hand. Then in our other hand, we have a loop of thread. We'll take the top part of that loop and we'll wrap it around our needle 3 times. That thread we just wrapped, we want to pinch together between our thumb and finger that's holding the needle, let go of our loop, and then we keep pinching our thread wrap as we pull our needle straight up, wrap our fingers around that thread, and just keep pulling till we get to the very end of our long end of thread, and you should have a knot. And after our knot there, you might have a little bit of thread. We'll just go ahead and cut that away. And I cut that nice and flush with my knot, just so I don't have a bunch of thread hanging out on the back of my project. So now we're going to start our running stitch. I'm just going to flip this around to make it easier so I can come in through like the neckline here when I fold my shirt. And as I mentioned, the running stitch is this dashed line here that we're going to make. So we'll just bring our needle up and about 1/4 of an inch inside that blue flower right there, and 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of that fabric. We'll come on up so we feel our knot nice and flush. And now we're just going to go forward about 1/4 of an inch, and then we'll pop our needle back up about 1/4 of an inch and kind of pull that on through. We want to make sure that thread is nice and flush with the fabric. We don't want to pull too tightly that it starts to bunch up. And we'll just keep on going. So aim for about 1/4 of an inch in, and then pop the point back up and pull on through. And we'll just go around our flower here. And it's okay if you're a little bit of like further or closer away to the edge. We're not measuring to be exact. We just want to use this stitch to kind of hold it down and add a little bit of a decorative element here. Down. I'm just going to work my way around the flower. And sometimes you can do more than 1 stitch at a time. You kind of tack on a couple like that and then gently pull through. We just want to make sure that our fabric and thread aren't bunching up. And stay nice and flush there. And the good thing about our HeatnBond is that it's holding this flower in place so it's not moving around while I'm trying to stitch this in. And to get to the upper part of this, I'm just going to kind of roll up my t-shirt here. It's a little easier to get in there. And this is one of the blank t-shirts that you can get from Michaels. They have a fun selection of colors. I chose white because I thought these flowers would stand out nicely. But this is also a great activity to just upcycle some of your other clothing you might have. Maybe you have an old sweatshirt with a logo on it, or just something that you don't wear all that much. This kind of applique embroidered design is just a fun way to add new life to your clothing. As you can see, this stitch is pretty quick. We're about halfway done with our flower petal here, which is nice. Or a flower, I guess, not the petal. We're on the third petal. We'll just keep going around. And by not covering the edge with this stitch, like the edge of the fabric, this is considered a raw edge applique. So the edges of our fabric will be exposed when we do the running stitch. Our next stitch will be the buttonhole stitch, and that one will be right along the edge of the fabric. So it will cover that up. But this way you get to see the raw edges of our fabric. So if you were using like a contrasting thread or something that stands out a little more, you'd be able to kind of see some of those differentiations between the edge of your fabric and the thread accent. And the last petal of this flower here. As you can see, I'm kind of rotating my t-shirt as needed to make it easier to stitch as I go. One more stitch. We'll make sure our needle goes to the back of the fabric here. So you can see we've gone all the way around our flower. And now we want to knot our thread on the back. So open this up nicely. And I like to do what's called a slip knot when I knot my thread off. So thread's coming out of the back of the fabric. I want to cross that over itself so it makes a loop. Bring our needle through that loop. And where all of that thread crosses right there, that will be our knot. So we want to kind of stick our fingers inside that loop and tension it down so it's nice and flush with the back of the fabric. Hold that in place and then gently tug so our loop becomes a knot. And I'll do that again just so everyone can see that really well. But you only need one knot. So thread's coming out of the back. Cross our thread over itself so it makes a loop. Bring our needle through that loop. Where everything crosses, that's our knot. We want to get that cross thread nice and flush with the back of the fabric. Hold that in place. Just gently tug so our loop becomes a knot there. And then I will cut the rest of this thread away, like so. So we have our first flower attached there. And because I still have some of this blue, I'll just jump over and work on one of these flower centers real quick. So to make our quilter's knot again, hold our needle pointy side up in our dominant hand, take the very end of our long end of thread, cross that in front of our needle so we make a little plus sign, and pinch those two together between our thumb and finger that's holding the needle. In our other hand, we have a loop of thread. We'll take the top part of that loop, wrap it around our needle 3 times, and pinch that wrap, let go of our needle, let go of our thread, and then keep pinching that wrap as we pull our needle straight up until we get a knot at the end there. And again, we'll just trim away any of those extra threads after our knot. All right, so let me flip my shirt around again so I can reach in there and get one of those flower centers. And we'll keep going with the running stitch for this part. So come on up here. And you might notice it's a little stiffer when you're going through multiple layers of HeatnBond when you go to do the flower center. So you might just do 1 stitch at a time here instead of running through a couple. Again, I'm kind of aiming for about like 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of my fabric, as well as spacing my stitches out about the same length and space in between. And it's okay if it's not precise. No one is going to measure or probably notice if some of your stitches are longer or there's more space in between others. And there we go, we have that flower center. So again, we'll just knot this off, the thread coming out of the back, cross that over itself so it makes a loop, bring our needle through that loop, and where everything crosses, that's our knot. We'll get that nice and flush with the back of the fabric, hold that in place, and gently tug so we have a knot back there. Then we'll cut the rest of this thread away. There we go. One more blue flower center to do. So I will get the other 3 strands of thread I had here. We'll get our needle threaded. We have our short end and our long end. We will cross the long end in front of our needle, pinch where those cross, and then take the top part of that loop and wrap. Pinch our wrap, and then pull our needle up so we have a knot at the end. And trim away that extra thread. So last blue flower center here. Up, yeah, 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Finish up our running stitch here. And I chose flowers for this design, but you could do anything you want. Maybe you want stars or strawberries, or if you're thinking for the holidays, pumpkins would be super cute, or maybe something for further out holidays like trees or bells or presents. You could do whatever you want here. Or maybe you want to do some letters and monogram your shirt. The possibilities are kind of endless. It's finished with our running stitch. Last bit here. Okay. We'll knot our blue thread off one last time. So thread coming out of the back. Cross it over itself so it makes a loop. Bring our needle through that loop. And we want to get that cross thread flush with the back of the fabric. Hold it in place and gently tug to get a knot there. And the important thing when we make our knot is we don't want to tug that thread too tightly because our running stitch might cinch up and tighten up our fabric there. And we want that to be nice and flush. So don't pull too tightly. All right, we have our blue stitches all done. And now we are going to move on to the buttonhole stitch, which is this slightly more decorative outlined stitch here. This one has like a ridge and then some lines that stick out on the inside. So that ridge is going to go on the outer edge of our fabric, and those lines will be on the inside. For this part of the project, I'm going to use this peachy pink thread that kind of matches the flower centers a little bit. Again, we want to find the barcode end, the thread end that's sticking out there, and we'll measure out another arm's length. So nose out to fingertips. And the reason I do that is because if you stitch with more thread than that, it can sometimes get tangled up on the back of your project. And using your arm's length helps you know exactly what you need for your own arm. So just like last time, we want to split apart our thread. So we'll pinch the very end, grab one strand at a time, and pull straight up. So our thread bunches underneath our fingertips. Set that one thread next to us, flatten out that thread we pulled from, and then we'll go in for another. And we want a total of 3, but we're grabbing them one at a time here. Pinch, and there we go. I'll just set these other 3 strands next to me. And these 3 I pulled apart. I'll put them back together, line them up at the end here. Very nice and even. And again, gonna get them wet so they stick together nicely. And then just hold it as close as I can to the end of my fingertips to glide them through the eye of my needle. And just like we did with our blue thread, we want to put a knot at the end of this thread. So we'll do our quilter's knot again. Hold our needle pointy side up. Take the very end of our long end of thread, cross that in front of our needle, then pinch those 2 together between our thumb and finger. We'll have a loop of thread in the other hand. Take the top part of that loop, and we want to wrap 3 times around our needle, pinch our wrap together, let go of our loop, and then keep pinching that wrap as we pull our needle straight up till we get a knot at the end of our long end of thread. And we'll just cut away those extra little thread bits there. Okay, so for our flower here with the buttonhole stitch, just like we did with the running stitch, we're going to come up about 1/4 of an inch or so inside our flower petal away from the edge here. We want to come on up so we feel that knot nice and flush with the back of the fabric. And now we want to hold our thread towards the outer edge of our flower petal here. And we'll go back down into the flower petal about like 1/8 of an inch away from where we came up, but parallel to it. And then we will pop our needle back up right on the outer edge of our flower petal here, making sure that thread we held towards the outer edge goes underneath our needle there. And we'll gently tug. So we make it looks a little bit like an upside down U here. We want that to be nice and flush with the fabric. Now we're going to continue this. So again, we go into the fabric about 1/8 of an inch away and parallel with those other stitches. Pop our needle back up right outside our fabric here, our yellow fabric. And then again, just gently tug. And as you can see, we're starting to make that line that goes along the outer edge here. So we'll just kind of keep finding that inside and then pop it up towards the outer edge there, like so. And we'll keep working our way around our flower. You want to just gently tug so that thread sits right flush with the fabric and isn't bunching or too loose. Turn our corner here. This inside is about the same length away, but I want to pop up right kind of next to that last stitch I did. So I follow the outer edge of that pattern. And I'm coming up right next to the outer edge of that fabric there. So we're not coming up in the yellow fabric, just right next to that outer edge. So that way that thread sits along the outer edge of our design here. Kind of like an outline or a frame. So someone in the chat asked if you're doing a straight line, if you would still keep them about 1/8 of an inch away. It's kind of up to you. So if you want your stitches more spaced out, you could space them further away. If you want more thread design on there, you could put them closer together. You do want to make sure that you don't have kind of long pieces of thread hanging out on the front of your garment or the back because they can get caught on things. So I usually recommend keeping your stitches like no longer than 1/2 an inch on the front of your fabric. I usually go a little shorter than that, but it's kind of up to you and how you wear your piece too. I would say I am very hard on my clothes and also have 2 dogs that love to jump up and play. So any kind of stitching that isn't very flush with my fabric tends to get caught. As you can see, we're kind of working our way around our flower here, doing that outer edging. And you could make these stitches on the inside, the straight ones, a little shorter if you wanted to as well. I wanted them to show up a little more, so mine are about like 1/4 of an inch long, but if you wanted them to be shorter, they definitely could be. I love that embroidery is a little bit like coloring and handwriting. Everybody does it a little differently, even though we all do the same stitches, they're all going to look slightly different based on our personalities and kind of the design we're going for. So that's kind of the fun thing about embroidery. And I'm kind of at that little inside part of my petal, so I want to space out the inside, but when I come up along that outer edge of my fabric there, it's pretty close to where the last stitch was. Someone in the chat asked how well this washes. I haven't had an issue with it doing anything funky. I honestly throw all of my embroidered clothing in the washer and the dryer. If you do have issues with it, I would recommend kind of hand washing and just laying it flat to dry. I know some washing machines and dryers, they eat fabric and do all sorts of funky stuff or get too hot and then shrink things. And if that's the case with your machine, I would recommend just hand washing and laying it flat to dry. Getting kind of close to the end of my thread here, so we'll do like one more stitch, maybe two. And then because I'm kind of in the middle of my buttonhole, I have my thread around that loop on the outside. So I'm just going to bring my needle down around that like bar that we have here, right on the outside of my flower petal here. So it just holds that loop in place. And we'll knot our thread away. So just like we did last time with our slip knot, thread's coming out of the back, cross it over itself so we make a loop, bring our needle through that loop. When everything crosses, we want to get that nice and flush with the back of the fabric, fold it in place, and give it a little tug so we have our knot there. And we'll cut this away. And I'll grab my other 3 strands of peach thread here. Rethread my needle and put my quilter's knot at the end. So cross my thread, wrap, pinch, and pull. And then we'll cut away the extra thread there. And now we left off in the middle of our buttonhole. So instead of starting on the inside like we did last time, we want to come up inside that loop right along the outer edge there so we can keep on going. So now we'll go back on the inside edge, come on up, and tug so our loop is nice and flush. And repeat. So go back into our fabric, pop our needle up right by that outer edge, and again, gently tug. And we'll just keep working our way around our flower here. And I chose to use 2 different stitches just for a little bit of stitching contrast, but if you wanted to stick with just one of these, you could definitely do just the buttonhole or the running stitch if you want as well. Either are great options for adding some stitched elements to our pieces here. running stitch is a little bit more of a beginner-friendly stitch, and the buttonhole, I would say, is a little more intermediate just because you have to hold the thread and position it and make sure you're going through kind of a loop, which is a little more tricky than our running stitch there. So just the 2 stitches I chose to do for this project, but there are tons of different embroidery stitches that you could use to add fun embellishments or designs to your pattern as well too. And if you want a little more structure, you could use an embroidery hoop to hold your fabric in place. I find that because the HeatnBond adds kind of some structure around the fabric we're stitching, I don't necessarily need an embroidery hoop, but that's my personal choice. If you want an embroidery hoop, you can definitely use one. You just want to make sure you're not stretching out your garment when you put it in there. So if you were to use an embroidery hoop, I would recommend adding your fabric design first and then putting your garment into the embroidery hoop before you starting to stitch. The nice thing about this project is it's a pretty quick one, so you could finish up something like this in like an hour or two, depending upon the types of stitches you're wanting to do. I personally love to watch a little TV when I embroider, so it's kind of like a fun, relaxing evening. So I've gotten to about the end of my thread there again. So because we're still in the middle of our buttonhole, we need to bring our needle down right along the outside edge of that straight thread there on the outside of our flower petal. Gently pull that to the back so you can see that's nice and flush there. Do our slip knot again. So thread coming out of the back, cross it over itself so we make a loop, bring our needle through that loop, and where everything crosses, we want to get that nice and flush with our fabric, hold it in place, and tug so we get a knot. And then we'll just trim away that extra thread. Now we need to measure out some more thread because the buttonhole uses way more thread than our running stitch did. So we'll find our thread end again by the barcode end, measure out our arm's length, put that away here, and we'll measure out 3 strands of thread one at a time. So pinch the end, gently pull. So that all 3 of our threads here. I'll set my other 3 down next to me so we can use those in a little bit. Back. These 3, make sure they're nice and even. Go and thread our needle. And we want to put a knot at the long end again. So make sure we have our loose short end, take the long end, cross it in front of our needle, pinch, and then we have our loop, wrap our loop 3 times, pinch our wrap, let go of our loop, and pull our needle up, pinching and pulling until we get to the end of our long end of thread. And we'll just cut away that extra thread there. And we'll keep going with our buttonhole. So come on up inside that kind of loop of the outer edge there. And we'll keep on going. So have our knot nice and flush with the back of the fabric, hold our thread towards the outer edge, and then go back in about 1/4 of an inch away from that straight stitch, and then we pop back up right along the outer edge of our yellow fabric there. And keep on going. Sometimes that outer edge thread doesn't want to lay as flush as we want, so you have to kind of gently tug your thread so they all stick together nicely. So we don't want one that's a little looser than the other, otherwise it might get caught in something. Someone in the chat was asking if this stitch is similar to the blanket stitch. Yes, the buttonhole and blanket stitch are very similar. They look very similar as well too. They're made slightly differently, but the end result looks almost the same. So if you wanted to do the blanket stitch instead of the buttonhole stitch, you can definitely do that. I feel like there are a few stitches in hand embroidery that are made differently but look the same, so they're a little interchangeable, like the chain stitch and the reverse chain stitch, as well as the French knot and the colonial knot. So depending upon if you prefer stitching one over the other, there you can kind of mix and match with those, which is nice. Almost finished up with our first blanket stitch flower here. I mean, our buttonhole flower. Wow. Blanket stitch on the brain. Someone else asked if they didn't iron on their applique, should they put their piece in the hoop? I would say yes, just because the iron on applique adds a little more structure to your piece and helps it from not moving around. I would recommend pinning your fabric onto your garment and then placing that in the hoop if you aren't using the iron-on stabilizer. So now that we're kind of at the end of our buttonhole here, we need to connect this section with that one. So we're just going to bring our needle down inside that top loop, right along that outer edge of our fabric, and gently tug so it continues that straight line we have along the outside. And that is our buttonhole. So we'll knot our thread off on the back here. So again, make our slip knot, cross our thread over itself, bring our needle through that loop. Our cross thread, we want to get nice and flush with the back of the fabric. Hold that in place and tug so our loop becomes a knot. And then we'll cut that away. And we'll keep using this pinky peach thread here to buttonhole this inside circle and the outline of that flower too, just because I like symmetry. So it's like 2 buttonholes and then a running stitch with like the yellow and the blue, but you can do it however you would like. There is no right or wrong. All right, so we need to put a knot at the end of our long end of thread again. So hold our needle pointy side up, cross our thread over our needle, pinch, take the top part of our loop and wrap 3 times, pinch our wrap together, and gently tug our needle so we get a knot at the end of our long end of thread. And again, we'll cut that extra thread away. And we'll start on our flower center here. So again, we want to bring our needle up about 1/4 of an inch away from that outer edge there. Gently tug so we feel our knot nice and flush. Hold our thread towards the outside edge. Bring our needle back down about like 1/8 of an inch away from that where we came up and kind of parallel to it. Go back in and then pop our needle back up right on the outside edge of that like yellow fabric, my inside circle. And gently tug so our loop becomes flush with the fabric. And we'll work our way around the circle here. And when you go through multiple layers of the HeatnBond, it can be a little stiffer. So just be gentle with your hands and fingers. I always recommend kind of pinching the needle and pushing instead of pressing down like that, just because that will hurt your fingers a lot more. Rotate the t-shirt a little bit here to this circle. Circle is just so much tighter that I kind of have to keep rotating my t-shirt here to make it a little easier to get the direction right for my stitches. Here. just have enough thread on this to finish up our buttonhole, maybe. So when we finish our buttonhole, again, we want to just bring our needle down inside that first loop we made to make our straight stitch there. And make our slip knot on the back. And if your thread's really short like this, I sometimes find it's a little easier to unthread your needle. So that way you can easily maneuver thread here. Bring that tail end through the loop, get our cross part nice and flush, hold it in place, and then tug so we get a knot. And then cut away more extra thread there. All right. So I know I have one more flower to stitch here on the outline, outer edge, and I would do the buttonhole for that with my peach thread some more. But we only have a few minutes left, so I wanted to make sure if anyone had any questions about anything, those got answered before we wrap up. Looks like maybe not, but that's okay. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can find me on Instagram at mcreativej. Oh, any finishing techniques or touches to do once we're done stitching. So my t-shirt, I just left it as is with the back like this. If you are worried about any of your stitching kind of getting caught on anything, they do make another iron-on stabilizer that you can put on the back that will go like inside t-shirts and garments that can cover up any stitching if maybe that got a little funky or you just want to add a little protection back there. Yes, someone mentioned Tender Touch in the chat. Sophie does make an option called Tender Touch that would work really well. There's a couple different brand and options out there, and I know Michaels carries quite a few that would work as well too. You just want one that will go on the inside of your garment. And if you had any questions about any of the materials we used today, they are all linked in the workshop description. And as mentioned, we will have this recording live, not live, but republished later so you can rewatch at your convenience and maybe do this project again. So thank you so much for joining me today.